Taming the High Cost of College, Episode 16.
You have kids, they grow up, and before you know it, it's time to plan for college.
Where do you start?
How much is it going to cost?
Will you qualify for financial aid?
Should you be looking into scholarships?
When will you be able to retire?
What about student loans?
The list of questions is never ending. The good news is, all the answers are right here. Welcome to the Taming the High Cost of College podcast. Here is your host, certified financial planner, Brad Baldridge.
Hello, and welcome to Taming the High Cost of College. I'm your host, Brad Baldridge. Today we have an interview with Christina Wright. She is a college counselor with a company called College Wright, and she's going to talk to us today a lot about essay writing and some of the tips and tricks that students may need to understand when it comes to the college application process. Then we have a question today from an attorney about trusts and how trusts are treated for financial aid. But before we get into that content, I'd like to spend a couple minutes talking a little bit about student loans. So the student loans have just released their new rates for the 2014-15 school year. It's the summer of 2014 right now, if you're listening to this in the future. So they've declared that the direct undergraduate student loan, direct subsidized loan, and direct unsubsidized loan, the interest rate for students will be 4.66% for undergraduates. It will be 6.21% for graduate or professional students. And then the PLUS loan, the loan to parents, will be 7.21%. All of those interest rates are about 0.8% higher than what they were a year ago, and they will be changed again next summer. So if you have a student going off to college in the 2014-15 school year, those are the rates that apply. If you have younger kids and you're saying, well, my students aren't going to be off to college till some years in the future, well, the way the loan system is set up now, we're going to have to wait until the summer before college starts for the government to declare the interest rate that applies for each particular year. So for most families, if you have 4 years of college for a particular student, they will get their interest rate declared every summer before that college year starts for that college year. So as an example, if you had a junior in college right now, going to be a junior, their freshman year, the interest rate was 3.86. Now they've just declared for the sophomore year, it will be 4.66. For the junior year, the following year, which hasn't happened yet, that one will be declared a year from now. So again, the new interest rate's 4.66 for students in the undergrad and 7.21 for Parent Plus loans. All right, let's move into our interview today. And just as a reminder, all the stuff that we talk about in this interview will be available in our show notes at tamingthehighcostofcollege/16. Let's go to the interview. All right, I am sitting down today with Christina Wright. She is a counselor at a company called College Wright, and they are a boutique college counseling company. They help students primarily, and students and families figure out the college process. So welcome, Christina.
Thank you very much. Thanks for having me today.
So tell me a little bit about your company. What is it that you do? What do you help with? What is it that you don't do?
Sure. So what I do, I guess maybe it would help to get a little background information on me and where I've come from. I have over 10 years of experience in the college counseling and college admissions industries. I started back when I was right out of college as an admissions counselor at a small State University of New York campus that was a merchant marine academy. Then from there, and I was an admissions counselor there. So I recruited students to go to that school. Then from there, I worked at a college counseling company in California where I was on the other side of the desk helping over 200 students and their families navigate the college search and college application process. Then for 5 years, I was an admissions counselor at Marquette University, also evaluating applications and recruiting students. So now I am the owner of College Wright here in the Milwaukee and Chicago area. And what I do is I help all different kinds of students and families, regardless of grade point average, activities, wherever their background is. I help them find the right match. I help them find the right college match for who they are. And then I help with the whole college application and college essay process. I'm really here to alleviate the stress and the confusion that I think surrounds this entire process. It should really be fun. I believe that it is fun. And I have a a wealth of knowledge that I just am able to impart on families and really kind of make them see that this is an enjoyable thing to be going through, as opposed to a labyrinth that is scary and confusing. So,
all right. Yeah. So one of your goals, it sounds like, is to relieve some of the stress and perhaps the family combat that happens sometimes around the whole college process.
Yes, absolutely.
Okay. So you mentioned that one of the things you get involved in is essays, and I think that's a topic that my listeners haven't heard much about from me, because I am kind of diametrically opposite from essays. I work a lot with the finances and helping pay for college. So let's talk a little bit about essays. So I guess to start with, do all colleges require essays, or most, or what's the guideline there?
So I would say that at this point, probably 90% of colleges that a student would apply to would require an essay. And you might say, well, why are they requiring these essays? Isn't this a little ridiculous? My student is already writing so many papers in school. Why would they need to do one more thing? Well, the reason is first of all, there's about 4,000 colleges and universities in the United States of all shapes and sizes. Then there are a couple million kids every year applying to these schools. And the essay is really the only way that you can understand kind of who that kid or that student is on a more personal level. There's only so much you can tell from grades and test scores. The grades and test scores don't give you an idea of a certain student's personality. And so the college essay is about storytelling. It's a chance for a student to tell a story about who they are as a person and to shed light on their personality and to kind of make a connection.
Okay. So do you think colleges actually read the essays?
100% they do. I can tell you that from experience, from 5 years in the Marquette admissions office, where I have absolutely no idea how many essays I read because it's so many. So yes, I read every single essay that came across my desk. And I did enjoy it for the reason that it was that only glimmer into what's beyond these test scores and these grades. Who is this student? And yes, we absolutely read every single essay.
Okay, so what is a typical essay? How, if people that don't have a lot of experience, how long are they? How many do you have to write? What topics do they ask about?
Sure. So first there's the basic personal statement. Really, any school, this is what you're going to have. And on the common application, that is the kind of main essay. That should really only be about 1 page, 500 words, not too much more than that, really. And that's the main essay. Like I said, if you're talking about the common application, there's several topics that they give you as just kind of ideas. If you wanted to choose one, there's no right or wrong answer of which topic you choose. The point is really just the personal statement. And again, the chance to tell a story. So that's, I'd say, like the main essay that pretty much every school is going to ask you for, regardless of if it's the UW system or the Common App or any school, big or small. There's other essays, though. Some schools, the more selective, Ivy League schools, some very selective liberal arts schools, Stanford, you might have to write 5 essays. And that's a lot. But that is, again, another way for them to learn who the student is and be able to kind of, unfortunately, weed students out. And so it's just more ways to get to know who the student is.
Okay. So if I'm obviously students now have this project where they're going to need to be writing essays. When do students typically start working on it? And then, as your professional advice, when should they start working on it? Because I'm guessing there's a little procrastination in this process.
Yes, there definitely is. So when do they? If they're not working with a college counselor, and if their high school guidance counselor is not, good and on it, sometimes people wait until the last minute. I mean, I think they're high school kids, of course.
So when is the last minute?
November.
So the essays are due with the rest of the application?
Yes, absolutely.
Okay. November of your senior year is when essays are due. Okay.
Well, this gets into a different topic, maybe for another time, but colleges have different deadlines for when the applications
but as a general rule of thumb, I mean, I've always told people that, you need to have your applications in by Thanksgiving, unless you have a good reason to do it later than that. I mean, and procrastination's not a good reason.
Yeah, I like that. I like Thanksgiving is great. Even Halloween is better. But yeah, though you're right. So it really should be done by November. But as what I would tell you as a professional, I would want students, if you have a student right now who's what we call rising senior, where in September they're going to be a senior in high school, they should be working on this stuff now in July.
Okay, so summer before the senior year is a good time to get started on essays.
100%, because first of all, applications are going to be available in about 2 weeks. You can start applying to colleges.
So what would the date be? Because sometimes someone's going to be in the listening to this past. So you're talking typically July?
Yes, July. It would be, I have to look exactly, but the common application's usually like July 15th or something, when the actual application, you can log in and start filling it out. And in my opinion, that's when you should be having those essays go. You should be working on those essays. The reason I say that, I know the reality of senior year of high school. You start and it's crazy, and maybe you have AP classes, then you've got homecoming, then you've got all these fun things that you're doing, and next thing you know, oh my gosh, I have to write this essay. My applications are due. That's why you want to start in the summer, so you're not freaking out. Again, to alleviate the stress. I really believe that. So start now. Mm-hmm.
So you're writing essays. So do most kids, or do you recommend kids, let's say they're applying to 6 schools and they write a personal statement or a good essay or whatever, can they use that at all 6 schools, or should they be doing more than that or less than that?
Yeah, they should use that for all 6 schools. That's so the great thing about the common application, and again, we can talk about this at another time, but the common application does make things a bit easier with that personal statement. Yes, that personal statement goes to every single college that you apply to. And so the one big statement, yes, that should go everywhere.
Okay. Mm-hmm. But then some colleges might give you a prompt that they kind of force you into a topic. Is that?
Yes. So the other essays that colleges ask for, a lot of schools ask, why do you specifically want to go to this school? Why do you specifically want to go to Marquette? Why do you want to go to Northwestern? Whatever it is, that's a different thing.
Okay, so if you write an essay that says, I want to go to insert college name here, and then you give a generic answer, and then stick in the right colleges, I think as adults we realize that it doesn't work. Can you elaborate on that?
It doesn't work because you're not showing the admissions counselor or the admissions officer, who has thousands of essays, thousands of applications that are coming into the school. You're not showing them that you've done any research on the school, that you really have any interest at all in wanting to go to that school. An essay like that shows that you're just kind of throwing applications against the wall and seeing what sticks. Instead, you should have a concrete reason why you like any particular school you're applying to. This doesn't have to be an earth-shattering reason. It could be just one thing that one interesting research project that you read about that was done at the school, one cool study abroad experience that you could do there. Just one or two things that show you know why you've picked this school to apply to.
Okay, so the essay again is your opportunity to I guess set yourself apart. Would you say that essays are often used as an example, like a tiebreaker in the admissions or financial aid office, if they're saying, well, we've got 10 of these scholarships left, we need to pick 10 out of these 20. Mm-hmm. Let's read their essays?
I don't think I can't really speak to financial aid because I didn't work in the financial aid office, and I don't know really of any school where that would be something that would be a process. This is really just for within the admissions office.
Okay.
And again, with the more selective the school is, the more these essays really come into play. Because if you look at a school like Columbia University, which is actually where I went for undergrad, one of the most selective colleges in the United States, only 6% acceptance rate, they have to have more reasons to deny people. They're looking for reasons to deny people. So the essays become really important and a really big way for those admissions officers to either latch on to a student and go to bat for them, or to say, well, we got to use something to put this person on the chopping block. That doesn't sound very nice at all, does it? But it is a process that they have to go through when you're that selective of a university. So
Okay.
that's, yeah.
So let's break it down by
Sure.
maybe caliber of the student. So you just mentioned if you're really pursuing the absolute high end, I mean, you've got high test scores and high academics, and you're saying, I want to go to the Ivy League or even the more competitive, more selective schools, then you're looking at typically those types of schools are going to ask for multiple essays.
Yes.
You're going to probably need to tailor essays per school.
Yes.
So let's say if you're applying to 5 or 6 elite schools, we're talking maybe 12 essays, then maybe you can modify a few to fit multiple, but a lot of work.
Yes, it's a lot of work, and this is a reason why I think college counseling is a very important industry, and college counselors like myself can really help, because you need to actually evaluate if these schools are something you even should be applying to. I believe that students should apply to a couple of safety schools. Safety meaning not that they're bad schools, but that you have a very good chance of getting into those. So maybe like 3 safety schools, probably 4 target schools. Target is you really match up well. Also really good chance you would get into those schools. And then maybe 1 or 2 reach schools. Reach schools, every Ivy League school is a reach school no matter what. I don't care who you are. It's going to be a reach school for anybody on the planet. So it's okay to have a couple of those. So that's why you know, when people decide, well, I have this, you know, amazing GPA and I have this 36 on the ACT, I'm just going to apply to every Ivy League school. That is the worst idea, in my opinion, that you could make, because you could actually not get into any one of those schools, because you have to realize everybody with a 36 is applying to those schools.
Right.
Everybody with a 4 point whatever is applying to those schools. So you have to have a well-rounded list. And then you don't have to do as much work. Yeah, if you apply to every one of those schools, you're going to have about 1 million essays to write, and you're going to waste your time. So,
Right. And I have actually a little different philosophy as far as how that works. And I think I've said it on a few other podcasts. But from a financial side, and again, students can apply wherever they want to go. But when I look at the elite schools, I tell families that counts. As many elite schools as you want to apply to is fine from the financial side. But that counts as 1 school. Because there's a good chance that you'll be denied at all of them. And then we need to find some schools from a financial perspective, not where you're a good fit, but where you're above average fit, so that you have the opportunities to shoot for some scholarships, you have the opportunity to be desired by the particular college. And that's, you know, again, the merit aid that we've talked about in the past. So you have to realize that we kind of have competing opinions here a little bit, because one is, what does the student want to do? And obviously, most families say, well, we want our student to shoot for the stars and do the best they can and live their dream and all that kind of stuff, until we boil down to, well, how are we going to pay for this dream? And then reality sets in a little bit. So there needs to be a balance, but I think you certainly can consider the elite schools. So now let's talk about that next tier of students, the ones that say, well, you know, I could probably chase the elites, but I don't have a real good shot. And maybe you as a counselor are kind of discouraging it, saying, well, you know, I can't say never, but it's not likely. And we all kind of know those, you know, that various level. So now we have students that are saying, well, I can't get to the elite schools, but I'd really like to go to maybe a name brand school or a strong state school. Maybe I want to go to University of Wisconsin, their flagship, or University of Iowa, their flagship, or I want to try and get into, you know, University of Indiana because I like their basketball team. But they're not quite as selective, but they're still got a little bit of challenge to them. You're still going to need to write essays for these big flagship schools, and do they read them too?
yes, and yes, yes, you do have to. Yes, because also, I guess, well, one thing I want to say is, again, it's really all about matchmaking. I don't really like the idea of name brand schools. I don't think you have to go to a particular name brand school to be successful in your life. I think it really is all about what's the right match for the student. Is it urban? Is it rural? Is it suburban? Is it a tiny school of 1,000 students? Is it a big school of 50,000 students? You know, is it a place that focuses on liberal arts, or is it more pre-professional? Sports, activities. So I like to work. That's very fun for me to work with students on. But yeah, if you're talking about even those Big Ten schools, absolutely they have essays, because again, they're attracting a ton of applicants. So it's another way. So maybe this would be a good time for me to kind of talk about maybe what makes a good essay.
Yeah, let's get into that a little bit then. So, but before we get into that,
Sorry,
let's go to the low end student. Okay, now we have a student that's saying, well, I'm going to struggle to get into my local state schools. I'm going to, maybe I'm going to have to consider a community college to get started or something like that. And again, essays at that level, now what's your advice? I mean, they're going to be doing it, but...
I mean, I'd say it's important for every single caliber of student, because even a student that you're talking about whose grades there might be some, let's say, blemishes on a transcript. An essay actually could be a good opportunity to shed some light on maybe what was happening in that person's life. Because I've gotten, as an admissions counselor, I remember getting applications where you'd see a student's freshman year of high school, A's and B's. Midway through sophomore year, what's this D doing here? Why are there these D's? What's going on? And I would have loved to have maybe a little elucidation from a college essay. Maybe something horrible happened. Maybe they had an illness. Maybe one of their parents died. I mean, there are so many things that could have happened. And honestly, that's where you can explain some of those things, is in an essay. So I still do think it's important. I also think, and it can be even more important for a student like that, because if a counselor is sitting there, an admissions counselor, and is going, well, this kid has these bad grades. Maybe their test scores aren't that bad, but the grades are bad. If that kid has an essay that allows you to connect with them as an admissions officer, then they might be more willing to go to bat for that student.
Right.
So.
Okay, so great. So now essays might, from a competitive standpoint, perhaps the student isn't as good a writer as the top students, and we all realize that. And I think admissions counselors might forgive that to some extent, where if their target isn't the super good writer, then they're going to, like an engineering school. A lot of times that they don't consider writing that important or as important, where they were more concerned about content. Well, that might be fair to say that if you can write it reasonably well and do reasonable on punctuation and that kind of stuff, that it can often help and not hurt, even though you think you're a bad writer.
Right. And I don't really think that really anyone's a bad writer with these college essays, because if you're doing it the right way, because it's all about telling a story about you. And everybody likes to talk about themselves, and we love telling our own stories. So yeah, even if a student who might say, well, I'm a math and science person, what the heck am I going to write about? Well, you could write about that physics class that you loved and that one experiment that you did in that physics class that made your brain go, oh, this is what I have to do for the rest of my life, and really to describe it and flush out the details and paint a picture of something like that, of that class and of that experiment. I've seen amazing essays from all kinds of students. You wouldn't even believe it. I mean, everybody really does have a story. So
okay, so I guess at varying levels, the answer is always tell your story, do the best you can. How do you recognize a good essay? So a lot of my listeners are going to be parents, and somehow at some point their student is probably going to hand them and say, here, Mom, here's my essay, what do you think? How do you tell a good one from a bad one? Give me some tips.
Well, first of all, I would actually caution the parents against being the first editor of the essay. The problem is parents are way too close to the source. They love their kids so much, and that's great. But they could get an essay, and this happened sometimes when I was a college counselor in California, where we would craft this amazing essay of a student telling a story about the first time that they went on a trip overseas to like Spain, and they were so awkward on the dance floor at this flamenco dance lesson place. But first they were standing on the wall as a wallflower, but somehow their confidence built up, and by the end of the night they were dancing flamenco with all these new friends. Well, you might hand that to your mom, and your mom would go, what is this? I mean, you were captain of the soccer team, and you were, an Eagle Scout, why aren't you writing about those things? Because those things, a lot of kids are captain of the soccer team, and a lot of kids are Eagle Scouts or whatever it is. Nobody else has that one story about dancing flamenco and being awkward and finding your confidence. That's what it's about. That makes a good essay. So I always would say to parents, in the nicest way, let the student write their essay and then let them show it to an English teacher. Let them show it to a even their counselor at their school, because as a parent, you're so close to the source. My mom still does that to me today. I'm 32 years old, and you should be doing this, but I love you and I just want the best for you. Well, the thing about these stories is the best stories reveal something unique about the person. And the story that's like, well, when I scored the winning goal in the citywide soccer tournament, that showed me the importance of dedication and perseverance. That to me is boring as an admissions counselor, because so many kids could have written that exact same essay. But I remember a girl, when I was my other college counseling experience, she wrote about how when she started playing soccer, she didn't care about the ball. She and her friends would pick dandelions in the field, and it was this great image of her picking dandelions in the field. And then she realized, I don't think soccer is what I want to do. And then she ended up going on and doing theater. But that stuck in my mind. I still remember that to this day. So that to me is more interesting.
Yeah, I can relate to that. My son's playing baseball and being in the outfield, and next thing you know, they're not even watching the pitcher or the action that's at the infield. They're staring further out into the outfield and talking to their friends. Okay, so can you give any advice to the student that's saying, well, gee, I don't know how to start. How do you pick a topic?
Sure.
I mean, what's a typical solution to that problem?
I would say kind of start brainstorming. What's a moment that you've been really proud of in your life? What do you have any special talents that you think? Do you have any hobbies that you do? Was there one particular road trip or vacation that you took? Talk about your favorite class in high school. There's just so many things. What is like a philosophy maybe that you live by, or there's so many things that you could think about. And I think some of the best essays, they come from unexpected places. As an admissions counselor, I remember reading a girl's essay about how her mom made her go to this French tutor, this old crotchety man French tutor, and she at the beginning hated it, and she couldn't get the words right, she couldn't get the pronunciation right, but after about like a year, she finally pronounced something the right way, and he finally cracked a smile and told her she did a good job. And that again also sticks with me to this day. So the essays can come from so many places, and that's something I love doing with students, is brainstorming essays. We do a whole bunch of brainstorming questions, and we sit and kind of workshop it together, and you find some really cool stories and great things to tell a college about, so that they know who you are as a person.
All right. I guess to kind of move to the opposite side, can you tell us anything that we may want to try to avoid, mistakes to avoid? One that comes to mind for me is, well, should you use humor? Should you try and be dramatic? Are you trying to make the counselor cry? Those kinds of things. Is that good idea or bad idea?
I would say this is so kind of cliche, but being yourself is the best thing that you could be. If you're a funny person, it's okay to be funny. If that's who you legitimately are, it's okay to be funny. If you legitimately in your life use big words like plethora, okay, use plethora in your essay. A lot of high school kids don't use the word plethora. But don't try to impress the admissions counselor. That's my biggest thing. People imagine an admissions officer as some old man with a pipe, and he's got the patches on his sleeves of his tweed sport coat, and he has a big deny sticker or deny stamp that he's putting on everyone's app. That's not what admissions counselors look like. I don't look like that. And most of the people are younger. They've just gotten out of college. So you don't have to try to impress those people. The thing that impresses them the most is again, being yourself. So just judge by your gut. What's being yourself? Yeah, trying to make someone cry. You don't have to have some horrible tragedy. I read an essay from someone when I was, again, an admissions counselor, and this kid was writing about the worst day of his life was when his pet rabbit died, and how it made him realize the importance of living each moment to the fullest, and he didn't know he could go on if he could go on. I'm sitting there reading this saying, what are you thinking, kid? Like, there's probably so many other things you could write about, but someone told you have to come up with a tragedy to make an admissions counselor want to accept you into the school. And it became laughable. Those kind of essays were the funny ones that we would pass around to each other within the office to say, oh, this is bad.
Okay. Any other thoughts or mistakes that come to mind as far as, I guess one that comes to me is the student should actually write the essay.
Thank you.
I think there's, again, this isn't my advice. I heard this many times, but I think most people that read essays can see through if it doesn't look like it belonged to the student.
This could be a very lengthy podcast about, please, parents, allowing your students to take some ownership over this entire process. So yes, parents, please do not write the essays for your students. Yes, admissions officers can tell. It's embarrassing. Let your kid be who they are and write the story. The other thing, I guess, is kind of leads off of that. If you're calling admissions offices as a parent, if you're calling on behalf of your student and pretending to be your student, the admissions officers can tell. That happened many times, where a mother would call and pretend to be her 16 or 17-year-old daughter. And I can tell someone's voice who's in their 40s or whatever sounds a lot different than a 16-year-old. So yes, do not write the essays, parents. My other thing I would say, and you don't have to have gone through, again, some tragedy or have done some exceptional experience in order to write an essay. Kids think, well, I haven't done anything amazing, so what am I going to write about? I haven't saved polar bears in Alaska. I haven't, taught English to orphans in China. What am I going to write about? You don't have to have done those things. Everybody has something they can write about. So don't try to come up with some exceptional story. Also, on the application, there's a place to list all of your accomplishments. There's an activity summary. Every school is going to have something like that. That's the place to say, I was the Eagle Scout. I was a student council president, anything like that. So an admissions officer is already going to see those things. What the essay is kind of a peek behind the curtain. Tell the story about, okay, fine, you were an Eagle Scout. Tell the story about the Eagle Scout project that you did, where you, planted flowers for the senior citizens home, and talk about that. Tell the story behind that. Just listing, I'm an Eagle Scout, I'm this. Well, they already know that, so.
Okay, so you're right. So the essay needs to be more of a narrative or a story, not just a regurgitation of all your great accomplishments.
Exactly.
All right. I think we're going to wrap up here as far as essays. So I guess the last question I have that I'm going to ask many of the people that I'm interviewing is, do you have any, I'd like to have 3 quick tips, just quick 1-minute ideas. Could be related to essays, could be related to any other process or part of the college process that could help parents or students.
Sure. So my first is have an appropriate email address. Do not list some ridiculous email address that you made as a joke on your applications. First of all, when you start this process, if I'm talking to families right now, the kids are going into senior year in the fall, create a brand new email address just for college. Like mine might be Christina4college@gmail. That way I know this is only for all the college stuff. That way you don't get these, and I saw this as an admissions counselor, would get these email addresses that these kids were listing and they were so inappropriate. Ms. Playboy Bunny at Hotmail, Green Ganja God at Hotmail. I mean, that is ridiculous. Have a little tact. Make a new email address that's just for college.
And I think that would also help. I mean, I tell parents the same thing. You can then use that one email for scholarships and for applications, and then all your college stuff happens at that email. And then you're not giving out your work email and getting all kinds of solicitations and so forth from colleges that you're not really interested. And when the college process is done, you can shut it down, and you won't continually be marketed from all the various college companies that might eventually get your email address.
Yeah, that's great. And I think Gmail is a great tool to use. I mean, there's so many easy ways to organize within Gmail, even within that college admissions, college address, because you're going to get a lot of mail.
Right. All right. What's number 2?
Okay. Another thing is, and this kind of ties into that, keeping organized. Make sure that you have, so not just on your computer, but have actual folders, even maybe a filing cabinet where you store all of the things related to each of the colleges. I know people are getting enough college brochures in the mail that they could light on fire and heat their house for an entire winter, even like the winter we just had. So keep those things organized, put them in files, and also in those files, have an actual paper checklist. And it's a good idea to write things down, not just on the computer. It's actually, I think it helps you remember things, to have your checklist. What have I done yet for this school? Have I sent this in? Have I sent that in? And then I'd say the third quick tip is have real concrete reasons for applying to each of the schools that you're applying to. That involves doing research, but you should be researching these schools. And you should have, if someone says to you, why are you applying to X school? You should be able to say, because of this. Maybe just one thing even. Have a reason. Don't just throw applications against the wall and see what sticks.
All right. Well, thank you. And again, that was Christina, and her company is College Right, and she can be reached at, her email is Christina@collegeright, and the website is www.collegeright.com. I appreciate you spending some time visiting with us, and we'll put all the contact information in the show notes as well. Any final words before we hang it up?
No, but thank you very much for having me, and I hope I helped some people with this little podcast.
Sounds great. We're going to end it here and move on to the next segment, and we'll wrap it up here.
Have a question? Brad is accepting questions from his listeners now. Record a question at tamingthehighcostofcollege.com and get it answered on one of the future episodes.
Today's question comes from an attorney. She emailed me questions about an estate that she's working on, and I'll read some of the email to you now. It says, an issue has arisen in one of my cases. I was hoping to get your brief thoughts on it. The issue relates to a probate trust matter where the father of 5 children passed away. 2 of the children are in college, and the other 3 are 16 and younger. Under the provisions of the trust, the children will receive each of their shares in an individual trust, and the value of each share will be in the range of $20,000 to $25,000. So in this situation, a father passed away. He set up a trust, leaving his assets for the children, and now we're trying to determine what we should do with these trusts. So then the next question would be, would it make sense to terminate the non-economic trusts and distribute the funds into a UTMA or a 529 for each child? For the college students, I was considering direct payments to the educational institution. For the younger children, is it preferable that the funds remain in the trust? Or should we distribute the funds from the trust and deposit them into a UTMA or a 529 account? All right, so let's talk in general about trusts. I believe the financial aid has intentionally made trusts relatively transparent. In other words, for most situations, the idea that, well, we're just going to put our money in a trust will make it unavailable for college, and that way we'll get a whole bunch of financial aid, generally does not work. Those types of strategies have been tried in the past, and then they've already set up rules to prevent the wealthy or whoever from taking their assets and hiding them in a trust so that they can in turn get financial aid. Most of the time, you're going to have to report a trust if you have control of it or if you're a beneficiary of a trust. So you're going to have to report the money, and the trust may just make things more complicated for no real benefit when it comes to need-based financial aid. Now, one of the thoughts was to send money directly to the educational institution. Now, that may be a good situation or a bad situation, but I would contact the colleges themselves and verify how they will treat that money, because sometimes they will treat that money dollar for dollar against need, which is a bad situation. In other words, if your financial aid states that you need $20,000, so you were on track to get $20,000 of scholarships or loans, and then $20,000 comes from dad's estate and pays the bill, now potentially you don't have any need at all because $20,000 just came and paid the bill essentially. That is not generally the intention, and you'd be better off to move that money, either leave it in the trust or move it into the student's name or into a 529 under mom's name. So there's other things that you may want to do with the money for students that are in college. But one of the important things to do is contact the college and ask them how they would treat the money and if you did various things. Now, when it comes to the younger kids, where college is still in the future, what should we do with their money? Again, having the money in a trust does not shield it from being reported. So the next step would be to either have the trust or distribute the monies in some form out of the trust, but then invest the money either in the student's name or in a 529, perhaps with a parent as an owner. So in this situation, mom could potentially own it, or an aunt or uncle. Any way that you do that, though, that will help move the, change the financial aid picture, and it would be reported in a different way. 529s are generally considered a parent asset, which is a better position than it being considered a student asset, which is what the UTMA or the trust would be. So hopefully that would help. Again, I think the biggest takeaway is trusts are no solution when it comes to financial aid planning. All right, that wraps things up. We are going to end it for today. I appreciate you listening. If you have any thoughts or questions, please send us an email. Join us on Facebook. And again, the show notes are available at tamingthehighcostofcollege.com/16. Goodbye.
Thank you for listening to the Taming the High Cost of College podcast. Now it's time for you to take action. Head to tamingthehighcostofcollege.com for show notes, bonus content, and to leave feedback for Brad. The next step on your college journey starts now.
Brad Baldridge is a registered representative of Cambridge Investment Research and an investment advisor representative of Cambridge Investment Research Advisors, a registered investment advisor. Securities are offered through Cambridge Investment Research Incorporated, a broker-dealer and member of FINRA and SIPC. Brad owns two companies, Baldridge Wealth Management and Baldridge College Solutions. The Baldridge companies are not affiliated with Cambridge Investment Research.